Shalom, sweetest friends. I'd like to talk about Purim, but before doing so, I hope to relay the final words that the current Prime Minister of Israel just said to Congress. And he quoted Devarim Lamed Aleph, Pasuk Vav, Deuteronomy 31:6. And he said, Chizku v'imtzu al tir'u ve'al ta'artzu mipneichem. Ki Adonai Elohecha hu haholech imach lo yarpecha velo ya'azveka. Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them. For the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you nor forsake you. And I hope that we can take those words of encouragement and those words of strength and continue to learn together. So in understanding Purim, it's really funny. Why don't we ask about Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is the day like Purim. When you look more carefully at it, it seems like there's a lack of content to Purim. Where's the spirituality? Hanukkah certainly is more spiritual. Pesach certainly is. And these are the 3 times we really celebrate survival. So why is Purim neglected from its content? Similarity between Purim and Yom Kippur? Well, we definitely had the lots in Purim. Haman put a goral, he made a lot and chose a day for the Jews to be exterminated. And on Yom Kippur, we also have a lot, so to speak, a goral, where we are deciding in a sense from the divine. We're trying to get a decision from the divine to determine which goat we need to send away. And so there's a lot that is, or a lottery that is made, or was made at Purim, and one that was made at Yom Kippur. So with this understanding of this basic connection, we see that there's something about these 2 days that is above logic. The only time you need to make a lot is when you can't, with the given facts, the evidence that's in front of you, make the proper decision. But here we see that there's no way to know whatever it is, when to deal with the proper forgiveness mechanism, and when the final day of the Jews should be. Both of them have a lot. So you see that something above human logic, human reason, rationale, requiring divine assistance, requiring divine intervention, is the theme of Purim, as well as the theme of Yom Kippurim, Yom Kippur. So Hanukkah, that was a battle of intelligence. We know. We have the Yiddishkeit philosophy versus the Hellenistic philosophy. And this was an ideological struggle. Both sides had arguments. Both sides had reason on their side, so to speak. The Seichel of Torah was emes, and so we see that it was victorious, because the Seichel of Klippa, the secular intelligence, it's flawed, it's limited. But here, Purim, there's no argument. There's no debate. This is not a philosophy or a lifestyle that was being debated. It was just Jews. Haman's hatred for the Jews was the worst kind. The Gemara speaks of 2 kings, if I can relay this story. Each had a problem. One king had a hole in his kingdom, a pit, some hollow area, that made it very difficult to navigate around. And the other king had a mound, had a hill of sorts that made it very difficult to navigate around. To go over took many days. To go around, it took many days. And one day, the king with the hollow section, the one with the hole in it, found out that there's another king that's got this mound. And he comes with a proposition. And he comes over to the king with the mound, and he says, I've got this hole in my kingdom, and it's making things very difficult for me. Do you think that your mound could fill my hole? I'll even pay you handsomely for it. The king with the mound, he was overwhelmed. Someone's going to take care of his problem. So he said, you don't have to pay me for it. You're doing me a favor. So the Gemara tells us that this is the difference between the anti-Semitism of Haman and the anti-Semitism of Achashverosh. The anti-Semitism of Haman is when a guy feels that they're hollow, they're meaningless. Being around the Jew, it reminds them of how empty they are, how meaningless their life is, and that emptiness is very, very painful. So they think that if they just eradicate that which is causing them to think about their life, the pain will be less. It'll be lessened. And the pain, and what's this anti-Semitism of Achashverosh? Anti-Semitism of Achashverosh is the one with the mound, where there's something higher than yourself. You're here and the mound is up there. The Jew is more successful. The Jew is more intelligent, smarter, whatever it is. And being around the Jew makes you feel inferior. You can't stand the competition. There's no equal playing field. And so, in order to succeed, you want to eliminate the competition. You want to eliminate the Jew. And it's these guys, these two, the one with the hole and the one with the mound, that can form a union. The pain from the hollow and meaningless is much more intense, though, and than the feeling that you get from being around someone who's smarter than you. To feel like your life is meaningless is the greatest pain that you can feel. So what should be our answer? So the anti-Semitism of Haman, we need to first grasp, is irrational. There's nothing to say. Don't disagree. They feel completely meaningless and it drives them crazy. There's nothing you're going to be able to do to counteract that. Their hatred's irrational. The hatred is at the core of their existence. And this hatred is what we call Amalek. Amalek is a hatred that has no reason. No intelligence is there at all. What then can we say? When that kind of unholiness and hatred expresses, we have to respond with an equal countermeasure of holiness. You don't respond with a holiness of intelligence. You don't respond with an intelligence of rationale. If they want to hate Jews for no particular reason, our response is to be Jewish for no particular reason. They are evil at the core, and we're Jewish at the core. Our existence is wordless. It's beyond words. And this, my friends, is probably why the story of the Megillah is written without explanation. The story of the Megillah has Esther ascending to the throne for no reason. We don't understand the reason why things happen the way they do. There's nothing written down for it. That's because our expression and the way we internalize the story is supposed to be beyond words. And so the words aren't there. Purim is above all boundaries, all holiness. Remember, Amalek is hating the Jew for no particular reason. And we have to counteract it by being Jewish for no particular reason. We're Jewish at the core. It can't be described. It's wordless. And that's why the story of the Megillah is a story without any explanation. There's no words regarding this is how God runs the world. We don't have that written somewhere. This is the reason Esther became queen. There's no mention of God in the Megillah at all. It's beyond description. It speaks to the essence of who we are. If I could relay, there's a story. There's a Hasidic professor, and he's in front of college students, Jewish college students. And before anyone can say anything, before he gets into any of his speeches, he says, I know, you're going to ask me philosophical questions because I teach philosophy. And you're going to want to know why this happens and that happens and to explain this and that. But can I just tell you a story first? And so he relays to the students that there was once a Jewish soldier in World War I. He was a soldier in the Russian army. He woke up one morning, and upon wakening, he saw that there was a German soldier coming right at him. Without thinking twice, he shot the man. And as that German soldier was falling to the ground, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, he recited the Shema off of his dying lips. The Russian Jewish soldier had a nervous breakdown, and they had to ship him home. So now the college professor, after relaying the story, he says, you got any questions? He asked the Jewish students, do you have any questions on the story? Anyone know why he broke down? No hands went up. There were no questions. This is war, he said. No one's raising their hands. Don't you understand? It was in self-defense. Why did he have a nervous breakdown? There was a soldier that was coming at him, and he shot to protect himself. No questions? No questions. It was obvious to the students in the room. So the professor says, now that we've established that you're insanely Jewish, now you can ask me your philosophical questions. When it comes to the core about being a Jew, we don't need any words or any explanation. A Jew realized he killed another Jew, he has a nervous breakdown. Doesn't matter if he was from, he was not from, it makes no difference. This is why Amalek has to be erased completely. There's no questions. What should destroy it? Our Yiddishkeit. The basics and the core of being Jewish. Because that is addressed beyond words and beyond all actions. The Gemara says that on Purim, you're supposed to know the difference between, you're not supposed to know, you're supposed to be out of your mind, so much so that you're not supposed to know the difference between Haman and Mordechai. So what does that mean? Chas v'shalom, someone should think that it means that we don't know the difference between right and wrong anymore, or holy and unholy. So what does this mean? It means that you should recognize the goodness of Mordechai and the evil of Haman without even thinking about it. You're drunk, your mind is off, and you're gravitating. You just feel it. You're gravitated towards Mordechai. This difference is so deep. It's so real. There's nothing to know. Even when you're drunk, you're drawn to Mordechai and you're repelled by Haman. That is what Purim and Yom Kippur is all about. God has a relationship with Jews that's beyond reason. So if you don't listen and you break the rules, then you're guilty. So I ask you, if you're guilty, if the rules are that this is now your punishment, so then how do you get forgiveness? Forgiveness comes from a place that's beyond all rationale and reasons. It comes from God's obsession with the Jews, God's deep love for the Jews. Forgiveness is not a rational function. If you're low, He's going to lift you. If you're negative, He's going to make you positive. This is a description beyond words. It's without reason. You know Mordechai is humble. You know that Mordechai is wonderful. And you know that Haman is terrible. Today, we've got a world that's falling apart, and Purim is more important than ever before. We have to get in touch with the part of ourselves that's indestructibly Jewish. It has to be stronger than any force in the world. No rhyme, no reason, no argument. Maybe this is the reason Purim outlasts all holidays. We know that even in Mashiach, even in the time of the Messiah, we're going to be reading the Megillah. Did you ever think about that? Let me ask you. Esther was faced with a predicament of, does she plead on behalf of the Jewish people? And Mordechai, he comes to her. Did you ever think about what did Mordechai say to Esther to give her the courage to sacrifice her life to go to the king and plead on behalf of the Jews? We're told that Mordechai, he said 3 things. He needed 3 arguments. He first said, don't hide in the palace from the rest of your people. Don't think that you're going to be safe while the Jews outside, out there in the world, are going to be killed. They'll come for you too. That didn't really sway her too much. Second, the Jews will be saved, he said. The Jews are here forever. So the solution's going to come. The Savior is going to arrive. But you are going to miss your opportunity. Well, self-glorification didn't really work for her either. To have her moment, her place in history. And finally, he said, it's possible you're chosen to be queen. The whole reason the search was conducted in the first place. The reason you were in the palace for 10 years. All of this. Everyone who raised you, all the community that supported you, everything you've had, everything you've been given, it's all for this moment. And if you don't rise to the occasion, then you don't just destroy this moment. You destroy all the destinies that had to converge to make this moment possible. You could destroy everyone and ruin the past lives. that allowed you to come to this moment. And it's there that she decides to go and speak to the king on behalf of all the Jews. We see that the first two arguments didn't work, and she needed that third argument. Her place in history, destiny, and it stemmed from a respect, an honor. She coveted the relationships that she had with those who raised her, with those who made her who she was today. And it's that allowed her to rise to the occasion. So now's the final moment. We need Mashiach. Let's rise to the occasion and tell the world what it needs to hear. Tell ourselves what we need to hear. Achashverosh, he was a good king. You could say he was liberal. He invited Jews, he provided kosher food. He even had food that was good enough for Mordechai to eat and drink at his Seudah. But Mordechai, he was shocked by the party because he saw the Jews and they felt secure in their gullus. The king was friendly, they're saying. He's going to protect us. Aww. But the king turned on the Jews. And so we must never put our faith and our destiny in the hands of a human being. We're above that. Purim comes to remind us of that. We're beyond that. Our connection to God is indescribable. Unique is our relationship. This is our strength. It's our future and our hope. And we must say this today. People are confused who's our friend and who's our enemy. We must never forget, and this is going to sting a bit, but we must never forget that we are the center of the universe. The world is looking to see how we are going to react and how we'll behave. The world looks to us to know what's right and wrong, to be a role model, to rise to the occasion. The world respects and looks at us like we really are a role model. It's shocking how they believe in our prophecies, that we're going to come back, we're going to rebuild, we're going to return to Zion. They're so sure that the Jews are going to return. It's going to happen. We must speak to the world like we have this unique relationship with Hashem. For ourselves, we must realize that it is an awesome, holy day. The fact that we can work, not dress up in Shabbos clothes, and we don't have to have special food, that's because on that day, on Purim, we're above all of that. Our holiness is so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than all of these externalities that we face. Even when you do all that labor, when you're going to work the whole day, a Jew is still a Jew no matter what, no matter how he dresses, no matter what he eats. Mordechai and Haman, this isn't a argument over what's better than the other. Mordechai's everything. Haman's nothing. Mordechai represents our godly soul. Haman is our Yetzer Hara. On Purim, though, there's no competition. Mordechai is everything, and Haman is nothing, is not even a thought. The Jewish people are forever. God is real. Holiness is real. And the anti-Semites are nothing. Just a tool in history to bring out the best in us. Celebrate Purim. Read the Megillah. Hear what it's saying. Look forward to an incredible world that's unfolding, even though the headlines seem to be saying the opposite. There's something the Baal Shem Tov said. If you read the Megillah like it's a story that once happened, you're missing the point. The explanation is that the Megillah says the days of Purim should be remembered, done, practiced, and acted upon. The Rebbe said, we remember it in such a way that we relive it. It happens again, each year. Purim, we're making it happen again. It's an ongoing event. Psychologically, the fact that we observe Purim for 2,600 something years, it has made us immune to the fears of annihilation. Haman, there have been many since him. There have been many Hamans. And we have to do what we can to fight every one of them. Mordechai, he used political influence. But at the same time, we don't panic and lie awake at night, thinking, Haman's going to kill us. Even though we have one alive today that's saying the same thing, we're not paranoid. And that's because of our immunity, our Purim. Purim is our injection of strength. More so, there's a spiritual aspect. Purim's the reality of the world, and not an event in history. Good and evil, that struggle, it's an ongoing real battle. The godly soul really is Mordechai. It doesn't bow. It's not intimidated. Mordechai knew everything. The godly soul knows everything. Haman is a desperate player that comes and goes in history to bring out the best in us. There really is no competition. So bring out Shalach Manu, Tzedakah, reading of the Megillah. Every time we hear Mordechai, our godly soul rises. And every time we hear Haman, our fears melt away. This is not something that happened a long time ago. Today's Jewish man, today's Jewish woman is what it's describing. And the battle we're going through, there's still a Persia. It's scheming against the same people. The world hasn't changed, and the challenges are still the same. But the end of history is coming, and it's time to finish this battle. The war is a spiritual one more so than a physical one. Even in Mashiach, we will be inspired by the story, letting us know how we got here. We won't go back to the status of King Solomon of this world peace, so to speak. We're not going to go back to the good times. We're going to go forward to much better times. All these difficulties have made us stronger, holier, better, and even transformed the evil things in the world to good, to positive, to meritorious points. Purim fights the irrational temptation for sin. The only thing we can do is overwhelm them. Bring out the strongest weapons, our love for God, b'chol levavecha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol meodecha. Love God with all your heart and your soul and your might. We understand that all your heart means to know God. Use all your brain power, your logic, your rational faculties to break your heads over understanding God, understanding this world, succeeding and conquering it in all kinds of ways. All your soul means to give up your life, and I'll tell you what, we've done enough of that. And all your might, it means to go beyond all decisions and discussions and reason. Use your core, the entire essence of your being. I'm intensely Jewish, and that won't change. In fact, it will change the world. We're in a stage of with all your might. Bechol meodecha. That's our place in history right now. Bechol meodecha. Jews are Jews today more than ever before. We're so Jewish that we just shout it to the world. There's no argument. There's no discussion. Jews are real. God is real. And everything else will come and go. We're being Jewish when we read the Megillah. Sharansky was once asked, do you believe in the Exodus story? Do you believe the Exodus of the Jews from Egypt happened? And he responded, I am the Exodus of Egypt. Every generation has an Exodus. It's not history, it's fact. It's current events, it's current day happenings. It's in your life. This is what's going on in the world today. A beautiful idea is over this question of the mask. What's with all this hiding? As people like to dress up in masks, we get dressed up in costumes on Purim. Well, simply, God's name's not in the Megillah, as we mentioned. And so God is hiding. So we, in a symbolic way, are putting that forward, making that known. Because it's not like Pesach. Pesach, frogs were overrunning, just overtaking the country. It's pretty miraculous. On Hanukkah, the oil lasted for 8 days. It's pretty miraculous. But on Purim, the Eibishter is not so obvious. It all seems natural. Only if you know deep down inside that everything happens by divine plan, then you thank God. So the reason for the masks is on Purim, we appreciate the godliness, even when it's not always obvious. Tell you a story. Rabbi Manis Friedman was once on a trip. He had to go speak in South America. So he went on this long trip. He landed. He was really not in a good mood. And the shliach, the driver who came to pick him up, told him that before I take you to your housing, your accommodations, there's a woman that I promised that you'd stop by. She recently lost her 19-year-old son. I mean, Rabbi Manis Friedman was exhausted. He wasn't ready for this, and he simply didn't want to agree. He's like, how could you do this? He just got furious at the driver. Like, I didn't ask you to do this. You didn't ask me if I could do this. Like, who gave you permission to manage my trip? But the woman had just lost her 19-year-old son in a car accident. It had something to do with Rosh Hashanah time and on his way to Slichot. And out of the whole car, there were other people in the car. It was her son that died. So he comes to console the woman, and he doesn't even know what he's going to say. Because what can he say? It's you've just lost your son. And so when he arrives, I mean, interestingly enough, she actually opens up quite a bit in terms of how great her son was and how amazing he was in intelligence and in kindness and all the various things. She just elaborated from the time he was very small up until later in his teenage years. And so the only thing Rabbi Manis Friedman was thinking was, there is an understanding we have of how souls come into this world. And they're precious and they need a caretaker. And God's looking at the world of souls, and He's ready to take one to put into the world. And He needs a home for it. And your son sounded amazing, absolutely incredible, and the things you shared with him are irreplaceable. They're everlasting. They're precious. Can you imagine for a second if God just would have come to you and said, I have this 19-year soul I need you to take care of for 19 years. Would you do that for me? And he was almost sure the woman was going to say yes. She looked at him and said, no, I wouldn't allow myself to go through that pain. If that's the kind of God you are, keep your soul. I don't want it. So after she said that, and of course he was shocked by her response, he said to her, well, then it's a good thing God didn't ask you. Because had He asked you, you would have lost all these moments. And with that, I mean, she gave the cry of her life. And in 15 minutes, it was like Techiyas Amesim. She came back to life. She was part of society. And he reflected on the fact that, so they leave. They part from the home, and he's finally ready to go back to his accommodations. And he was thinking, I didn't want to come here. If the driver asked him before this whole trip, would he do such a thing? Would he come to console this woman? He said no. And he's so thankful now that he wasn't asked. Because if that was the case, he would have missed that opportunity. And so sometimes we yell and we scream and we kick and say, God, why have you plagued me in this way? Or why am I suffering in this fashion? Or why do I have this challenge or obstacle in my life? And if God would have come to you before any of these obstacles, any of these challenges, you'd embarrass yourself. You'd say, no, I can't do that. I don't want that. And so we're so fortunate to have a God, a partner in our life that trusts us and knows what's best for us. And it's good that God doesn't ask us which challenges we want to accept, because if He did ask us, we'd embarrass ourselves every time with the wrong answer. So the mask, so to speak, is that God doesn't ask us. And He doesn't allow us to underestimate our own abilities. He just puts the challenge there and says, I know you can do it. That's the meaning of no mention of God in the Megillah. He trusts us, and we in turn must trust Him. So it reminded me of a story that I read from someone I didn't get to meet in yeshiva. Before I read it, I just want to explain the connection. In what I just said, I'm trying to express the fact that you have a task that's going to be before you. So why don't you just think that God believes in you? I mean, after all, it's going to make the burden a lot easier, and it's going to make the work meaningful. And if you can think of the work in a meaningful way and care and have life be meaningful, then you're going to basically be carrying a lighter load. And since when does anyone shy away from a few tricks of the trade? So Judaism is really giving you these tricks of the trade. It's the path in life. So to relate, I've got this story, and it's speaking about this transformation of consciousness that one can go through, of changing a have to, an obligation, into a want to something you desire. So I'm relating it because the message of Purim is one where many of us are being asked to examine life with a partner, with our God, as opposed to life without a partner. So I ask, why suffer more? So here's a story that Rav Podolsky relayed. It's my favorite one in his book. It's called Something for Everyone. And it's called Tackle Football. Once upon a time, Sunday mornings were devoted to playing full contact tackle football with my friends. We took these games very seriously. Each ordered a complete football uniform of our favorite teams from the Sears catalog. I was the Oakland Raiders. We would play in rain or shine, snow or ice, sleet or hail or blizzard. I lived in Bangor, Maine, you see. Even when the mercury dipped below 32 Fahrenheit, we religiously maintained our weekly ritual. One Sunday, the tension was thick. The score was even. We did not play by the clock. Under such circumstances, we played until the first team scored sudden death, I believe is what it was called. The football moved up and down the field like a tennis ball. Each team tried to outsmart the other with various strategies. Our quarterback tried in vain to direct us towards the end zone. But with our frostbitten fingers and packed earth frozen solid, the deadlock seemed never-ending. In desperation, we decided to send our running back Danny straight up the middle. We lined up our blockers in formation, ready for the defensive onslaught. The other team was breathing heavily. Hot steam slowly evaporated above the playing field. We grimly stared at each other. This was war. 24, 17, 59, hold up, hey! The quarterback jerked back the football and stuffed it into Danny's abdomen. Danny rushed headlong into the fray, unconcerned about the 500 or so pounds into which he charged. The other team realized what was happening and blitzed forward. We struggled valiantly to keep them at bay, but they had the advantage of weight and will. Like a pack of snorting pit bulls, they piled mercilessly on top of Danny, who hit the icy ground, crack, with an ominous crack. Nervously, we peeled the defense off our friend, and there we found Danny writhing in agony. His arm was broken. Did I say broken? His arm was dangling grotesquely from the elbow. Filled with dread, we screamed, "Call an ambulance!" But Danny refused to hear of any such idea. "Don't worry, guys. I'll be all right." We rummaged around the park for a suitable stick and secured his arm in a makeshift splint. Danny not only played the game, he scored the winning touchdown. Now, years later, his arm is once again fully functional. It's a mystery of human nature. If you want to do something, nothing gets in your way. If you have to do something, everything gets in your way. How can we learn to want to do what we have to do? We're going to do it anyway. Why make it harder for ourselves? We may be capable of deriving pleasure from our every deed. And since when do we shy away from pleasure? Carrying a bag of diamonds is much easier than a bag of potatoes, notwithstanding their equal mass. Is it not possible to transmogrify potatoes into diamonds to transform a have to into a want to. There are people who seem to enjoy everything. I had a cousin like that. Whatever he had to do, he did it with a smile and a song. He even died with dignity. I used to think he was weird. Now I think he was lucky. We can all be that lucky. And all it takes is practice. Even with a broken arm, you can still score a winning touchdown. So this year, Purim should strengthen us. That whatever God is putting on our plate, He trusts and has confidence. And after we're done kvetching, we'll go and do it. Everything is a miracle. Every headline, only God runs the world. No one else does. So tell the world, get sane. You don't run the world. You know you don't run the world. You can't depend on humans. Recognize God runs the world. Do a mitzvah. Do it with real emunah. Do it with the core of your being. There is nothing more real than the Jewishness of a Jew. Chag Sameach.